It emits no sound, it doesn't appear on radar, but every time it takes off, both Russia and China fall silent. This is no ordinary aircraft, this is the B-2 Spirit, the Phantom carrying the absolute power of the United States. There are sounds that don't need to echo, but still make the whole world listen, and there are war machines that don't need to fire to make enemies tremble. The B-2 Spirit is precisely such a symbol. Not noisy, not ostentatious, but every time it appears, it carries a message, a warning from the invisible strength of the United States. When people talk about fighter jets, they often think of the roar of engines, thrilling dogfights in the sky, and the dominance of air forces. But the B-2 chooses the opposite path. It doesn't roar, it doesn't chase, it simply appears silently and sows terror wherever it flies. Because the B-2 is not an ordinary fighter plane. It is the world's most advanced strategic stealth bomber, owned by the U.S. Air Force, designed to penetrate any modern air defense system and destroy strategic targets with absolute precision. Even if that target is hidden beneath hundreds of meters of concrete and granite, the B-2 can still approach and annihilate it in a single strike. But what makes the B-2 a nightmare for both Russia and China is not its speed or firepower, but its near absolute stealth and bone-chilling accuracy. During the height of the Cold War, both superpowers, Russia and China, invested heavily in air defense and surveillance. They built advanced radar systems and dense air defense networks, stretching across thousands of kilometers, but they all had one weakness. They couldn't see what they couldn't detect. And that's exactly the B-2 Spirit. Not only stealthy, the B-2 carries within it the strategic might of the United States. That might is not merely military, but a cold diplomatic message. We don't come to negotiate, we come to end. Under President Donald Trump, the B-2 was not just an attack vehicle, but a strategic symbol, a testament to the United States' unrivaled superiority in defense technology. Donald Trump didn't just push defense budgets to hundreds of billions of dollars annually, he placed the highest priority on America's tangible global presence. Not through words, but through actions, and one of the clearest actions was letting the B-2 take flight, appearing at the right place, at the right time, making the whole world fall silent and observe. Because in the modern world, power doesn't lie in grandiose declarations, but in the ability to appear and vanish as if it never existed, yet leave behind consequences that cannot be erased. The B-2 is just that, a true phantom in the international sky. And that's exactly why Russia doesn't dare speak loudly, and China doesn't dare react. Because they understand clearly, once the B-2 is deployed, it's no longer a warning. It's a sign of the end. No one is born a legend, not even machines destined to rewrite the history of warfare. The B-2 Spirit, the stealth icon of the U.S. Air Force, also had a quiet and perilous beginning. It all started in the early 1980s when the threat from Soviet intercontinental ballistic missiles was growing, and air defense radar systems worldwide were becoming so sophisticated that traditional bombers had almost no chance of surviving if they entered enemy airspace. The Pentagon understood that future warfare couldn't rely solely on numbers, but on superior quality. A weapon capable of penetrating deep into enemy territory, striking, and disappearing without a trace. And so, the ultra-secret project called the Advanced Technology Bomber was born. The Americans didn't just want to create a stealth aircraft. They wanted a strategic bomber that could pierce through every existing and future defense system, a weapon ahead of its time. Northrop Grumman was entrusted with that historic responsibility. After years of research, testing, and refinement, an unprecedented prototype in aviation history was born. No tail, no vertical stabilizers. A completely new flying wing design. That was the B-2 Spirit. The perfect stealth aircraft. It flies like a phantom in the night sky. and true to its name, Spirit, it embodies the invincible spirit of the United States. However, creating such a revolutionary weapon came at no small cost. Each B-2 cost over $2.1 billion to build. The radar-absorbing coating alone costs millions of dollars annually to maintain. Yet, under President Donald Trump, this investment wasn't questioned but elevated to a national strategy. Donald Trump once stated clearly, "To maintain peace, you must prepare for war," and he understood that no symbol made rival nations wary like the B-2. That's why he increased funding for maintenance, modernization, and combat readiness for the entire B-2 fleet. For Trump, each B-2 was not merely an aircraft, but a bold message sent to every potential enemy. We can come at any time, and you won't have time to see us. Imagine when Russia deploys hypersonic missiles, and China installs quantum radar to monitor airspace. The United States only needs to send one B-2 into the sky, and all strategic analyses shift instantly. Not because they fear an attack, but because they don't know where the B-2 is. That is the ultimate advantage in modern warfare, and what's even more terrifying is that the B-2 doesn't fight alone. It's part of a strategic coordination system involving satellites, drones, and tactical nuclear weapons. When the B-2 appears, it's a sign that the game is about to end. Have you ever thought that a bizarre design, like a flying wing, could become the world's most dangerous stealth weapon? Have you wondered what makes a nation willing to spend billions of dollars just to keep something always silent in storage? Wait for the next part, where we explore the strange but incredibly sophisticated structure that renders every radar helpless. You can defend against an aircraft, you can react when it appears on your radar screen, but if it never shows up, if your early warning systems remain completely silent, that's what makes the B-2 Spirit so terrifying. Because its greatest strength isn't nuclear bombs, but its invisibility to the enemy's eyes. Not invisible like in science fiction, but truly stealthy against the world's most advanced detection systems. To understand why radar is blind to the B-2, we need to look at its very structure, unlike any aircraft ever built. The B-2 has no vertical stabilizers, no rudder, no distinct fuselage. The entire aircraft is a seamless flying wing, also known as a flying wing. This design minimizes its radar cross-section. Radar works by emitting electromagnetic waves into space. If the waves hit an object, they bounce back and create an image. But the B-2 is designed not to reflect. Its surfaces are rounded, angled, and calculated to the millimeter to scatter radar waves in meaningless directions instead of back to their source. And it doesn't stop there. The entire B-2's exterior is coated with a radar-absorbing material called RAM, radar-absorbent material, a special paint costing millions of dollars annually to maintain. It doesn't just make the aircraft fade on radar screens, but absorbs signals like a true shadow in the sky. What's remarkable is that even the bomb bay doors, engine exhausts, and wing edges are designed to avoid reflecting signals. Everything adheres to one immutable principle: leave no trace. Because a single flaw, a protruding angle, or a screw of the wrong material could expose the entire aircraft. And that's why the B-2 is likened to a mechanical masterpiece, a creation where every detail is a national secret. But the story doesn't end with design. The B-2's engines are hidden deep within the aircraft's body. Air intakes and exhausts are placed at specific angles to reduce heat signatures, avoiding detection by infrared sensors. This means the B-2 is not only invisible to radar, but nearly undetectable to thermal surveillance satellites. Even its noise is minimized to the lowest level, allowing it to glide through enemy airspace like a silent breeze. You see, while Russia and China invest billions in surveillance systems with long-range radars, quantum radars, and geostationary satellites, The US only needs one B-2 to take off, silently approach, and complete its mission before the enemy realizes what's happening. Why does this matter? Because in modern warfare, time isn't measured in hours or minutes, but in seconds. The one who sees first wins, but when you can't see the B-2, you've already lost. Right from the first minute, President Donald Trump spoke at the Pentagon early in his term saying, "We don't need to boast, we just need to make them fear silently." The B-2 is the embodiment of that statement, a symbol that's neither loud nor showy, but a chilling reminder. The United States can strike anywhere, anytime. When you don't see it, it's already above you. Have you ever wondered what a silent aircraft that never reveals its position carries inside? With the B-2 Spirit, what lies in its bays isn't ordinary bombs, but the ability to wipe out an enemy's entire military system in one strike. Because if the B-2's design is darkness, its weapon bays are the heart of that darkness, and that heart can carry the apocalypse. The B-2 is designed with 2 weapon bays inside its body. Here it can carry up to 18 tons of various weapons, from smart-guided bombs to bunker-busting munitions and nuclear weapons. That's right, each B-2 is a nuclear submarine in the sky, ready to strike strategic targets like underground command bunkers, nuclear facilities, or communication centers and erase them in seconds. One of the most dangerous weapons the B-2 can carry is the GBU-57, also known as the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Each bomb weighs over 13 tons and can penetrate 60 meters of concrete or 200 meters of hard rock before exploding. You heard that right. Even if the enemy hides in a bunker hundreds of meters underground, they cannot escape the B-2's strike. And it doesn't stop at conventional bombs. The B-2 can carry tactical nuclear weapons like the B-61 or B-83, with destructive power enough to level an entire city. Combined with its stealth, this means no nation, no matter how fortified its air defenses, can be certain of surviving if the B-2 is deployed. And that's why even formidable adversaries like Russia and China don't dare speak up when the B-2 appears near their airspace. They know full well that the US doesn't need carrier fleets or massive armadas. Just one B-2 is enough to send a terrifying message. We can destroy anything, anywhere, without asking permission. Under President Donald Trump, this capability wasn't just maintained but continuously upgraded. He demanded the Air Force increase the B-2 fleet's combat readiness, optimize navigation software, integrate real-time data transmission systems, and improve attack protocols to ensure target destruction. For Trump, the B-2 wasn't just an aircraft, but the invisible hand of the United States, a hand that can reach anywhere in the world without warning, and if needed, it will deliver a fatal blow. While the enemy is still unaware of what's happening, you can build walls, you can set up shields, but when the enemy flies through everything and strikes straight at the heart, you're left with nothing but silence. From Serbia to Iraq, from Afghanistan to secret campaigns the world has never been told about, the B-2 Spirit has always been the ace up the sleeve of the US Commander-in-Chief, and every time it takes off, a new chapter of global strategy is written. Have you ever thought of a weapon that makes both war and peace tremble? There is one, and it's flying right now. Some nations boast about missiles, others about aircraft carriers. But the United States only needs one B-2 to take off, and the whole world takes notice. But do you know how much it costs to keep that aircraft operational each year? That number isn't for the faint-hearted, not for nations that think short-term or spend little, but only for a true empire ready to pay the price to maintain its number one position. Specifically, each B-2 Spirit costs about $2.1 billion to produce, more expensive than a light aircraft carrier. And if calculated by weight, each kilogram of the B-2 is pricier than pure gold. But that's just the initial purchase price. Because to keep the B-2 operational, The US spends an average of $150 million per year per aircraft, covering navigation software maintenance, radar absorbing material replacement, specialized crew training, and top secret operational processes. Because the B-2 isn't just a defense asset, it's a national secret. Every maintenance session requires the aircraft to be placed in a completely sealed hangar. No light, no dust, no electronic signals can leak out. The stealth coating must be inspected by hand, every curve, every seam, ensuring no deviation, even by 1/3 of a millimeter. The smallest error could allow enemy radar to detect the B-2's position, and for the United States that must never happen. So the question is, why does the US accept spending billions to operate just 20 aircraft? The answer is that strategic effectiveness doesn't lie in quantity, but in fear. One B-2 can match an entire fighter squadron. One takeoff can shift the political landscape of an entire region, and most importantly, you never know when it's coming. Under President Donald Trump, funding for the B-2 fleet wasn't cut as in previous administrations. On the contrary, Trump increased the modernization budget to $9 billion from 2018 to 2022. He understood something many politicians didn't dare say. True power requires investment. No peace comes free, and no position is maintained by words. Trump chose to invest in something that makes both enemies and allies respect and fear. And that's the B-2 spirit. Thanks to this policy, the B-2 fleet is always combat ready, constantly upgraded with new sensors, new software, and real-time satellite data integration, making the B-2 not just a phantom, but a phantom with artificial intelligence, a system that adapts, analyzes, and updates in real time to strike with precision faster than any defense. The world today has many cutting-edge weapons, but nothing instills strategic fear like the B-2. Because it's not loud, it doesn't appear in the news every day, but every time it takes off, the global intelligence community jumps to attention and investigates. Think about it. Between a squadron of 40 F-35s and just one B-2, which would keep you awake at night? The answer lies in this. What you can't see is what you can't stop. And the B-2 is the definition of that. There's an unwritten rule in the military world. When a nation is truly strong, they don't need to threaten. And when a nation is weaker, they don't dare respond. Russia and China understand this better than anyone. That's why every time the B-2 spirit appears near their airspace, they remain silent. Not because they don't detect it, but because they're not sure they've detected it. During US exercises in the Pacific, or patrols in the South China Sea, or even in unpublicized secret missions, the B-2 spirit is always the silent observer, and, if necessary, the intervener. No radar lights up, no escort planes are needed, just one order from the US president, and a B-2 will quietly depart from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, fly over 7,000 miles, cross oceans, slip past dozens of air defense systems, and stand tall right at the enemy's border, without anyone knowing. One of the most notable events was in 2014, when tensions on the Korean peninsula flared up, and North Korea threatened nuclear tests. The US didn't send a carrier group, just a pair of B-2s flying straight from the US across the Pacific to South Korea's airspace, dropping simulated bombs on a training range. Russia stayed silent, China stayed silent, and Pyongyang went truly silent. No threat is stronger than a silent but precise action. Remember early in President Donald Trump's term when he declared he would abandon loose military restrictions and reimpose deterrence through real strength. Many criticized him, saying he was provocative, saying he destabilized the region, but reality proved no one dared cross America's red lines while Trump was in office. Why? Because they knew he was ready to press the button, and he had the tool to back up his words, the B-2 spirit. In classified Russian intelligence reports, the B-2 is always listed as an unidentified threat because its flight path cannot be tracked. Similarly, in Chinese military forums, generals often ask, if a B-2 infiltrates, will we know? The answer is not certain. And that's the scariest thing in defense strategy. You don't fear a strong enemy. You fear an enemy you can't control. Both Russia and China have invested tens of billions in quantum radars, magnetic field sensors, and geostationary satellites. But the B-2 remains an unsolved puzzle because it doesn't fight with overwhelming force. It fights by disappearing. In today's world, nothing keeps a military staff up at night more than something nearby that radar can't see. And the B-2 is exactly that. And every time it takes off, no news needs to break, no president needs to speak, just a blurry satellite image is enough to make command rooms in Moscow and Beijing scramble into emergency meetings. That's what US generals call victory without firing a shot. What do you think when just one aircraft can make two military superpowers fall silent? That's not a weapon, that's authority. No dynasty lasts forever, not even an invincible icon like the B-2 Spirit. But unlike those that become obsolete, the B-2 isn't being replaced because it's weak, but because the United States is always one step ahead of the times. And its successor is ready, bearing a cold and meaningful name, the B-21 Raider. It's not a copy of the B-2, but a redefinition of the strategic bomber for the 21st century. Because the Americans understand one thing clearly. While nations like Russia and China are still trying to figure out how to counter the B-2, the US has quietly prepared a new generation that's even more dangerous, even quieter, and even smarter. From the start of his term, President Donald Trump issued a clear directive. We don't just maintain our position, we surpass everyone. With Trump's backing, the B-21 Raider program was accelerated with a development budget of up to $32 billion and a vision extending to 2030. It's no coincidence that Trump chose the name Raider. The name comes from the nickname of the Air Force unit that carried out the legendary raid on Tokyo in 1942, right after Pearl Harbor. A clear message is sent. The B-21 is a response in the shadows, but with absolute destructive power. So what's different about the B-21 compared to the B-2? First, it's smaller, lighter, and stealthier. The B-21's design uses 6th generation stealth technology, integrating multi-surface invisibility, fooling not just radar but thermal and electromagnetic sensors as well. Second, it's a combat intelligent aircraft. The B-21 is designed to operate in modern electronic warfare environments and can even fly unmanned in certain special missions. This means, if needed, the US can send the B-21 deep into enemy territory without a single pilot stepping into the cockpit. Third, it's compatible with all the most advanced strategic weapons, from stealth cruise missiles to smart nuclear bombs and real-time satellite communication systems, making the B-21 both a strike machine and a brain coordinating an entire campaign. And finally, most importantly, the B-21's operating costs are many times lower than the B-2's. That's why the Pentagon plans to produce at least 100 B-21 Raiders, while only 21 B-2s were ever built. More units, more power, but still absolute silence. With the B-21, the United States doesn't just maintain the initiative, but creates a strategic landscape that opponents can't predict. Imagine when China is still investing in quantum radars, when Russia is still testing hypersonic defense systems, the US has already quietly flown the B-21 in Nevada's deserts. No one knows, no one sees, but everyone feels a new nightmare taking shape. You can fight what you understand, but how do you fight something you've never seen? Donald Trump didn't just believe in the present, he believed in dominating the future. And the B-21 is proof that America's military power has no limits. What do you think the world will do when they haven't even dealt with the B-2, and the US already has the B-21? Will it be silence or surrender in thought? Some things are born to make noise, and some are born to create silence. The B-2 spirit doesn't belong to the world of slogans. It belongs to the world of action. An aircraft that doesn't need to wave a flag in front, doesn't need to blare loudspeakers, only needs to appear to change the global geopolitical landscape. Unlike any weapon in history, the B-2 doesn't need to fight to win because it is victory the moment it takes off. And that's the strength of the United States. A nation that understands true power doesn't lie in how many battles you fight, but in making enemies. Bugans step into the fight. You see, Russia has hypersonic missiles. China has massive drone fleets, but just one B-2 taking off from the heart of America, flying tens of thousands of kilometers, slipping past every radar, every satellite, every interception system, and standing tall above the enemy's head. That's enough. No shots fired, no bodies counted, just a sound in the silence, a sign in the darkness. And that's the power the modern world cannot replicate. President Donald Trump didn't simply see the B-2 as a military asset. He saw it as the pillar of global deterrence policy. When warnings no longer work, when agreements are disregarded, when diplomacy becomes a performance, the B-2 is the final ticket to restore order. It needs no escort, no signal, just one command. A few hours later, you no longer have a command base, you no longer have a radar network, you no longer have confidence. Every time the B-2 appears, it's a reminder. The United States still stands at the top of the world. Not because it speaks louder, but because it acts faster, more precisely, and more terrifyingly. Even when the B-21 Raider is set to replace the B-2 in the future, the spirit remains an indelible symbol, a phantom that once changed the game and continues to live in the shadows, waiting for orders to end any threat. What do you think of today's world? A place where wars no longer start with tanks or aircraft carriers, but with a shadow that carries no sound. Are you ready to live in an era where peace is maintained by the silence of a phantom? And if you feel something is changing, if you feel the great powers are getting noisy, remember that America doesn't need to be noisy. We only need one B-2 spirit still flying, and the world is still holding its breath. Thank you for watching the entire video. Here we don't just tell stories. We analyze every move, every tactic, every shadow behind each war. If you're passionate about geopolitics, military power, and what's really happening behind the scenes of global battlefields, then B-21 Raider Chanel is the place for you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every video is a different picture full of data, analysis, and truths not everyone dares to speak. And if you find this content worthwhile, leave a comment to share your perspective. War is not a game, and every viewpoint has value.